Now that running Lucio or a double flex support is meta, Brig is widely considered the worst support of Overwatch 2. Despite that, there's a player in Asia who completely breaks the status quo and hit rank number 3 on the Asia ladder. So today we'll be looking at gameplay from Hyunb, the number 1 Brig player in the world, and we'll be showing you why Brig is the most underrated support in Overwatch 2. We'll also take a look at whether Brig's shield buff from 250 to 300 HP has any kind of impact on the hero as well. Today we'll be looking at Paraiso starting from defense. Hyunb plays around the teamfights and sticks to the fundamentals of playing support, but what makes this Brig special is his ability to recognize when he can carry the team and when to play aggressive, almost like a DPS. First, let's talk about his positioning. This applies to all supports, but the worst positioning to take on Paraiso Point A defense is the left stairs. When you get dove or the enemies get a pick, you're forced to reposition back towards the point, and starting from the left stairs, you inevitably have to cross into the enemy sightlines, increasing your chances of dying. But when you start from the high ground rooms like Hyunb, you're able to supply repair packs to allies in all positions, as well as being able to boop enemies off of high ground with whip shot. When it gets dangerous, you're able to shield bash back to point quickly while staying in cover and continuing to deny space. Because it's the first fight, it's okay to miss Brig's whip shot and follow up with a shield bash to prevent enemies from engaging, because in a neutral fight with no ults, there's no need to worry about hard engages from the very start. Even if you only prevent high ground access from the enemies and kill your DPS repair supports, it's easy to get value from a strategic standpoint, making it difficult for the enemies to take control of the high ground, allowing your team to effectively poke out the enemies for free. If you manage to land your whip shot against a diving Winston, you disable the enemies from engaging again or farming ult charge while their jump pack and bubble come off cooldown. Unfortunately, the ally Hanzo gets picked off while using the low ground, so Hyunb takes a step back and while continuing to hold high ground, contests the enemies attempting to access the backline. When an ally gets nanoed, it's important for Brig to pre-heal the teammate with a repair pack. After waiting for whip shot to come back off cooldown, Brig can easily burst squishies or split off with a shield bash melee whip shot combo. Cassidy drops to the low ground to high noon and the enemy Winston and Kiriko tries to stay behind cover. Hyunb shield bashes forward and displaces the enemies, allowing the team to focus them down. It's very similar to how a Reaper without Wraith form would play. Now that we're halfway into point A defense, both teams have accrued a decent amount of ults. The enemy Winston is forced to bubble early while leaping simply from the existence of Ana Brig. Hyunb shield bashes towards point as soon as the Kiriko ult is used and immediately rallies from cover as a response. The worst thing you can do as a Brig is to pop rally and get picked off, so great play from Hyunb. And now that the enemies have invested enough ults, it's time to guard off the high ground once again to deny them access to high ground. The enemy Winston primals to pick off the Hanzo who keeps playing low ground, so Hyunb pulls back to secure high ground again but gets forced to reposition from Hanzo's Dragon Strike. Although it's difficult to find proactive value from Brig, by guarding space from the enemies, Brig is able to carry games under everyone's radar. Hyunb cuts off the enemy Winston leap with shift and focuses down the tank with a double auto shield bash, double auto whip shot combo while the enemy's sightline is cut off through the allied Winston's bubble. Our team's Winston tries to get extended value from Nano and pushes out a bit too far, but because there are no ults left on the team, there's no way of defending the point if the tank dies, forcing Hyunb to die in an attempt to save the Winston. Point A is lost and the team is regrouping after losing another fight early in the second point. The ally Cassidy gets caught out and the Winston tries to extend his turn with Primal. The enemy Winston leaps in without bubble, allowing Brig and Ana to easily ward him off away from the high ground. Our Ana pings wanting to use her nano, and Hyunb receives it despite being down 2 players. Hyunb first focuses down the flanking Sojourn who isn't in position to be peeled off by the enemy team, pops a rally as a response to being antied, and shield bashes towards the Ana to protect her from the Hanzo ulting from the stairs. While rally is up, Brig doesn't need to be afraid of 1v1ing squishies, and he actually brought the fight back 3v5 solely by denying space and punishing off angles. This time, the Winston makes sure to bubble against whip shot and sleep dart. Hyunb uses a double repair pack and shield bash to keep the Cassidy alive against the Nano Winston, forcing him to use Primal Rage. However, with no high ground available, our tank gets picked off and our team has to pull out due to a missing front line. With only 3 players left, point B is lost, but the enemies only have a minute 30 left on the clock to push. As soon as the Cassidy gets dove, Hyunb immediately rotates to stop the aggression and peel for the Cassidy. In Overwatch 2, Brig's shield bash mobility got buffed, allowing Brig to engage and escape more quickly than ever before. After bursting the tank down, the team pushes forward in hopes of getting some stagger kills, and in order to prevent the enemies from pushing for free, Hyun steps on point to contest. However, the enemy Sojourn rotates around with the overclock, destroying our team's position. Although our team was able to shut down the Sojourn, the enemy Tracer did an amazing job following up and turning the fight. They eventually managed to cap the point in overtime. Now it's Hyun's turn to attack. Team comps are pretty similar, but the enemy team has a more poke-heavy comp with Hanzo and Kiriko. Thankfully, the enemy Kiriko overextends and is bursted down by a melee into Whiplash. While the enemy waits to recuperate, Hyun keeps his shield up to block shots from the enemy Hanzo. Thanks to the shield buff from 250 to 300, Brig can now block up to 3 fully charged Hanzo arrows, whereas before, she could only block 2. Although this might seem like a small difference, being able to block a one-shot ability one additional time turns out to be pretty valuable. Before, the shield would have broke, preventing you from shield bashing out after the second shot, making you a sitting duck. When the ally Winston jumps in, we can predict that the enemy Winston will do the same, so Hyun sticks around Ana and Cassidy to get ready to peel. As predicted, the enemy Winston dives in, but because Cassidy stays in the enemy line of fire, he unfortunately gets picked off. On top of that, the enemy Sojourn jumps in for a surprise shot on our Ana, ending the fight. While regrouping, Hyun reacts to the Winston leap with a whip shot, and as a response, the enemy team tempo ults with Kiriko and dives in. We unfortunately wake up the Winston, but our team counters with the Nano, forcing the Winston to ult back. Hyun knocks back the primal Winston from getting value and gets ready to rally against the enemy DPS ult. As soon as the overclock is used, Brig instantaneously pops rally as a response and pushes in with the team. The best times to rally as a Brig is either as a response to an enemy DPS ultimate or as a counter to Ana's anti during critical moments. Rally and Beat are one of the few ultimates that can counter Ana's grenade. When the team is getting cleanup kills, there's no need to be afraid as Brig, and you can knock enemies back into your team, especially in enclosed spaces while proccing Inspire. The Hyun Brig just hits different because he knows when to engage as part of the front line and when to stay back in order to disable or control space. After capping the point, the DPS and tanks are currently pushed up to take space early, and the supports are escorting the payload. They nano early in an attempt to reclaim some space, but our team is able to get 2 early picks for an advantage in the fight. Although our Winston gets picked off, the team has enough sustainability to keep a forward position. After sleeping the enemy Winston, Cassidy gets nanoed like the first fight, and Hyun immediately moves to pre-heal the Ana and Cassidy before they get bursted down. By pre-healing a nano DPS, the DPS player is able to extend their turn for a higher chance of survival. Rather than immediately giving up space, Hyun tries to block off the enemies as much as possible, buying enough time for the team to counterattack. With trades going back and forth on each side, Hyun sticks to the cart and pops Rally to get an upper hand in the skirmish. The Ana and Kiriko are split off and aren't able to pressure the objective, so rather than chasing them down, Hyun wisely stays on cart, choosing to allow the respawning teammates to eliminate them. Our job is to shut down the rest of the enemies who attempt to stall the point. Brig can easily displace any stallers with Whipshot while shielding herself from any incoming damage. Even in Overwatch 1, I'd argue that there weren't any Brig players, even amongst the pros, who have a higher understanding of Brig's kit than Hyun. Ideally, a mobile DPS hero like Genji or Tracer is the most effective in escorting the payload, but because our DPS comp is double hit scan, Brig is put in charge of the objective. The Cassidy gets dove again, and Ana uses a defensive nano for the 3rd time to keep him alive. By successfully defending against the Winston's dive, the enemy team is unable to engage again until their cooldowns are back up. In the meantime, we're able to continue pushing the cart. By doing so, Brig can disperse the attention of the enemy team, making it easier for our team to survive. After being displaced, Hyun deletes the Ana with the double melee shield bash shift combo. Because Brig is a hero with no limits to animation cancelling, it's very easy to obliterate a 200 health squishy. The enemy Winston ults, but isn't able to do anything against the Brig whipshot and shield bash. In fact, she's probably the strongest counter to Winston. The enemy Kiriko ult ends, and like we've explained previously, Hyun pops Rally to counter the anti and gain control of the fight. With the team bolstered up with extra health, Brig can now engage to shut down enemies who are taking off angles. Against Sojourn, Brig can whipshot her during power slide to prevent the hero from running away too far. The reason Sojourn takes off angles frequently is because of power slide, but Brig can single-handedly shut down even the most mobile DPS from taking aggressive angles. It's a work of art how well Hyun times Rally to either retake momentum after an enemy ult or to counter the ult entirely. Brig is very strong against dive heroes, so when enemies don't have much time to cap the point, Brig is able to carry just by shutting down the dives with Whipshot. For a tank, one turn equates to using abilities to engage, but because Brig can shut down movement abilities, she can force enemy tanks to repeatedly wait for the next turn, burning time from the clock. Even while getting dove, Hyun still finds a sliver of time to kill the Sojourn next to point, and when the enemy Sojourn has a charged railgun, he holds up the shield to completely mitigate the damage. His team is playing very well, getting early picks, and Hyun also does his job of cutting off the Winston on high ground. His fundamentals on positioning and understanding of Brig's value is just top notch. While holding the high ground, he doesn't even hesitate to deal damage against the Tracer. With the high ground fully secure, Hyun isn't afraid to engage onto the Winston and end the round. If you want to climb ranked, this is the perfect example of how to carry as Brig. While sticking to the fundamentals as a counter dive support, Hyun makes sure to look for a chance to pick off the enemies attempting to take an off angle or attempting to regroup with the team. Brig doesn't need to be afraid of taking a close range brawl against any isolated hero, but in order to have a chance to do so, it's important you're able to accomplish your job of peeling and denying space first and foremost. Even if your team struggles in the neutral fight, it's important not to get impatient with your team and wait for the best chance to capitalize on your team's engagement on attack. Our Sojourn catches the enemy Winston, who gets poked down by the Ashe, paying off for our patience and disciplined positioning. With our tank swapping to Wrecking Ball for a quick regroup, Hyun heads to the high ground to coordinate a ham and sandwich. Although we get picked off, the enemy team's positioning has gotten disrupted just enough for our team to take the upper hand and trade out for the dub. If you play to make the enemies miserable by gatekeeping high ground and disabling engagements, Brig can be the most frustrating hero to play against, allowing you to carry games and quickly rank up. Thanks for watching, and hope this video helped, and I'll see you guys in the next video with Dallas Fuel Hanbin's Junker Queen.